The door before the room. The first time Lina saw Sam, he was on the stone breakwater with a camera lifted like a promise. Winter light flashing off the lake as if the water were practicing how to be metal. She had a warm paper bag of rosemary loaves tucked under her arm, and the bakery bell behind her made its small hopeful sound. But she paused to say, "If you wait 10 minutes, the sun slips behind the cooper's shed. The glare softens. You'll catch the true color." He turned with a smile like recognition in a language you almost remember. "You talk like the weather is a person." He was travel-worn and careful, a scarf knotted by hands that respected cold. "Thank you. I'll wait." "Want a roll?" she asked, surrendering to the delay. "I have a few looking for meaning." Inside, the window fogged, and he wiped a small circle clear with the back of his wrist. "I'm Sam," he said. "I took the early train because my uncle died and left me a box of maps and letters that smelled like cellars and violets. I opened the box and found hunger. My mother spent a summer here once. She always said the sunrises kept their promises." Lina poured coffee, slid the roll across with butter because mercy is butter-shaped in December, and said, "I'm Lina. I bake the bread and referee the mixer when it thinks it's a siren. My father built small things that stayed, birdhouses, window frames, rules about kindness. He died 2 winters ago. I stayed for my mother. I was going to be an engineer, once." She didn't say that numbers had become disobedient after grief. Sam raised the camera without quite pointing it. "You engineer mornings," he said, earnest without apology. "Could I repay breakfast by photographing proof that beauty happens even when people aren't watching?" "Only if you show me the proof," she said, and he did. Gull shadow like a paper cut out over hammered steel water. The bakery window lit warm as if the room were keeping a secret on purpose. Lina's hands weighing dough, her ring finger dusted white like a vow practicing. They walked after she closed, behind the schoolyard, over the footbridge with the missing plank everyone knew to step around, through winter trees showing their fine bones. They learned each other's silences first. They fit. He carried 3 coins from different countries because his father said luck multiplies if it has accents. She liked the sound of value more than the number and kept her tips in a jar just to hear them rearrange their agreement. He tilted his head before he said anything hard. She touched the doorframe when she entered any room. Like reminding thresholds, they had responsibilities. They built rituals. Thursday walks to the cliff, where the lake rehearsed distance and intimacy at once. Sunday mornings lingering while the church bells called them sinners by name and they ignored it together. Power failed one night and half the town gathered at the bakery's wood stove. Someone played violin like rain learning a dialect, and when the lights returned, nobody cheered. They only breathed. They slept on the bakery couch because the hour had become a shelter that wanted tenants. She told him about wanting to leave when she was 19, about how her father's toolbox still smelled like cedar and gasoline and instruction, and how grief made numbers slur their speech. He told her about assignments that sent him toward edges, how sometimes a photograph felt like a small rescue, sometimes like theft he didn't want to be capable of, and how he kept looking anyway because truth feels better than pretending even when it hurts. When the magazine called with a longer assignment, overseas, months, she leaned on the counter and said, "You take pictures of beauty. I take pictures of truth," he said, and they both knew those words would argue with danger and then have to live with the outcome. He promised to come back. She promised to keep the ovens honest. They practiced missing with a week-long job in the mountains, calls stolen from a bench with borrowed Wi-Fi, his voice threaded with wood smoke and rain. He left in June. The train took him like a secret. The platform held the shape of his absence as if absence had weight. Summer forgot how to be decisive. The bakery kept her upright. People who needed bread also needed to be told they would be okay. She said it and found the saying made a small true thing she could carry like a pocket stone that warmed itself. His calls arrived from rooftops with laundry lines and from tents that apologized for being temporary. He spoke of kindness that made weeping feel clean, of loss that made weeping feel like theft. She wrote letters on paper because paper is a slow vow, told him about the dog that stole a croissant and feigned remorse, about her mother wearing her father's cap while tending dahlias, about a light the lake sometimes borrowed from nowhere. He returned for a week at Christmas with a beard grown by distance. They read names carved in the bridge rail by penknives, an index of hopeful vandalism. He slept and woke wild-eyed once, and she named the ordinary noises of the apartment until the night identified itself and apologized. Before he left again, he gave her 3 photos. The first morning's breakwater, Lina behind the bakery window, a domestic saint of heat and patience, and a crooked door alone in the woods where a house used to be. On the back, for the days we choose the door before we know the room. February called like an unfamiliar ring. The voice was practiced, the words required. There had been a road that lied, a truck that refused to forgive, an arithmetic that wouldn't balance even when you moved the numbers until they cried. She went outside and leaned her back against the bakery's brick because sky is the only ceiling that can hold a grief that big. She turned off the mixer because panic shouldn't have accompaniment. She sat on the flour-dusted floor and held her own shoulders the way you hold a borrowed thing carefully. Grief is an unhelpful landlord who visits at wrong hours. She remembered the way he loosened his scarf like a gentleman from a decade with better manners. Notes he'd hidden. You are the proof on the counter, tucked between flour bins. You are the middle of the place, behind the sugar. You are the morning's forgiveness, folded in the tea towel drawer. At the funeral, his mother put map box and letters in Lina's hands like giving someone a sleeping child. Here, please find somewhere soft. He is the sort of person the world tries to keep, his mother said, present tense insisted upon, and it felt like a rope tossed from a ship she wasn't ready to watch leave. Lina went to the orchard where the farmer pruned with tender brutality. We cut so it grows, he said, not as advice, just a handrail. She read Sam's contact sheets at his apartment, paper-clipped stories of strangers, taxi driver hands steering toward futures bought with small cash, a woman buying melons under string lights, her laugh translated into the grain. In a notebook he'd written a list titled Joy, various shapes, coin landing on edge, bird shadow crossing a sleeping dog. The way she says terrible like an apology to etymology. She stole the list and kept it in the recipe book next to cinnamon because cinnamon is a good mistake. The months learned to behave. Summer bazaar. Drum and fife nostalgia. Teenagers on the cliff trying bravery on for size. A letter arrived from a man who'd shared a courtyard with Sam overseas. He believed in mornings because you gave him away too. A posthumous portfolio ran in the magazine under Sam's title, Proof, with an editor's line Lina copied out and taped where the staff clocked in. There is loss in these images and also the evidence that loss is not an ending, merely a shape. She installed a bench on the cliff with a small brass plate. For the days we choose the door before we know the room. People sat without knowing they were borrowing a sentence from grief. She began carrying 3 coins, town, city, faraway market, rubbing them before hard conversations with suppliers, before waking alone nights when the toolbox upstairs sounded like footsteps and she wasn't ready to ask the air to explain itself. A young photographer came to shoot the orchard and stayed for the light at the bakery window. He fumbled coins and took unremarkable pictures until the 8th day, when he took one of Lina with flour in the air like obedient weather and the counter like a shoreline. You're not the subject, he said, embarrassed by the line he was about to say, but you are the light. She laughed because 2 winters ago that sentence would have bruised her. Now it rolled off like rain on a coat you planned to hang by the fire. Power failed again one storm night and the room filled with neighbors. Candles and a dog that cried like a bassoon until it fell asleep on her shoes. She gave away rolls because generosity beats accounting in emergencies. When the light came back, no one cheered, only exhaled like a room remembering its ribs. After, she unlocked the drawer with Sam's maps, set out the door photo, lit a candle for no one and everyone, and wrote him a letter about ordinary mercies. The apprentice finally learning the angle of the lame when scoring, her mother letting the dahlias go brown with dignity, the lake inventing a color she hadn't seen yet. She signed nothing. The letter went into the box like rain into ground that knows what to do. Autumn returned operatic. The orchard wore its baroque fire. She saw two boys hold hands on the bench and then let go when a car passed. She wanted to tell them courage has a wage schedule and payment sometimes arrives late. She did not. The bench listened. The lake rehearsed honesty and distance. She learned to say no to orders that wanted quantity instead of craft. Learned that saying no is a recipe with only two ingredients, clarity and breath. There were two possible futures and she lived both by turns. In one, she walked with someone new. The man who stood on the breakwater politely outside her weather, who looked at the orchard like it had told him a joke he promised not to repeat. They learned to hold grief in the third chair without asking it to change napkins or leave. She wrote a letter to Sam about the new man and slid it into the box without shame because betrayal and blessing are not the same shape and she knew which one this was. In the other future, she remained fiercely single as a noun and generous as a verb, gave the town good bread and better listening, went home to the cat named Cinnamon who hated people inconsistently, the most honest way to hate, and wrote to Sam once a month or not at all, both choices allowed by the constitution of survival. Either way, she kept the bakery's covenant with mornings. Either way, she visited the cliff on Thursdays, left two rolls, one on the bench, one on the flat rock where they had once carved initials with a hubris that turned out to be a prayer in disguise, and watched birds vote with their beaks. Either way, she lived. On the anniversary of the last train, she took the door photo from the map box and hung it near the bench. The frame tilted. She left it honest. People asked what it meant. Sometimes you choose the door before you know the room, she said. That's not foolishness. That's how courage reads without its glasses. They nodded the way people nod when a sentence finds the part of them that's been waiting for its name. A girl came into the bakery with a school camera and seriousness too big for her pockets. Your bread is famous, she said as if reporting on weather. May I take your picture? Lina said yes because permission is the aorta of a small town. The shutter sounded like a kiss you want to remember for the correct reasons. The girl emailed the file later, subject line, proof, a photo of Lina in the window light, flower suspended, counter like shoreline, map cabinet a blur, the cliff bench reflected faintly in the glass. Lina forwarded it to Sam's mother, who replied with one line. He would have been proud to be written like this. Evening fell with its navy shoulder. She wiped the slate and wrote tomorrow's menu, turned the sign to closed, and stood a long moment at the door, holding the hurt that had become a habit and the love that had become a room. Then she did what her father taught, the thing in front of her. She crossed the street, fed Cinnamon, lit a candle for the ordinary and the gone, and wrote on a slip of paper she folded into the map box. Love does not fail. It sometimes finishes, and after finishing it keeps walking beside you in a quieter color. The train cried and then was quiet. The lake turned its mirror over to dry. In the bakery window the painted words, knots, fig, butter, read backward from her kitchen, which is how windows teach you that the world will be right way around when you're brave enough to go outside again.